Welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. Please note, this episode is part one of a two-part interview. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. My name is Sendra Dorcé. I am your host, and as always trying to bring you the best of the best. And of course, stimulating conversations. And of course, my interest in politics always brings me to some of the most interesting personalities in our political world today. Today, I have with me Mr. Garry Guan, who is a professional interpreter, translator, small business owner, entrepreneur, and active Rotarian, and above all, a dedicated father and husband. Coming from China in 1987, he immediately embraced American culture and heritage as he pursued his PhD degree in anthropology and archaeology at the University of Pittsburgh. Moving to Georgia in 1992, he has been a passionate volunteer and leader with a number of nonprofit communities and professional organizations for over 28 years, including Asian American Resources, AARC, Partnership for Community Action, PCA, National Families in Action, NFIA, Atlanta Association of Interpreters, Translators, AAIT, and many others. A member of the Norcross First United Methodist Church, he has participated in mission trips to Nicaragua, and as president of the Rotary Club of North Atlanta, went on a humanitarian trip to Iquitos, Peru. Garry is a graduate of Atlanta Regional Leadership Institute in 2006. He was inducted into Who's Who in Asian American Communities in 2007. Promoting understanding and unity has been the hallmark of Garry's life. He has been a tireless champion in reaching out across Asian American and other minority communities in the metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia. He was one of the pioneers in participation of politics with the legal immigrant communities, which he refers to as American by choice. He started running for public office in 2010 election and has been active in the Republican Party in the state of Georgia ever since. Garry is also an accomplished scholar in history, anthropology, and archaeology with over 50 academic publications. He also has served as the managing editor for a major international academic journal, Chinese Cultural Relics. I want to say welcome to you, Mr. Guan. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. It's
Yes,
Guan or John?
Guan is correct. Yes, yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. So I say Shay Shay. I speak that's this much. So Shay Shay. So coming
Well,
on the show. We so appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. So
well,
I want to, bring you back a bit because, of course, reading your bio, you've accomplished so much, and I want to take you back to exactly. You tell me in your own words what brought you to this point in this time and what we're dealing with today. What brought you to this point from the time you were back in China?
well, that, I guess you probably needed to know the fact since I'm right now, just this year, already qualified for Medicare. And with that age, that's a lot to talk about. But I will cut it short. Of course, I was born and raised in China and the Mao's era, way back in the middle of 50s, and grew up really having the first-hand experience. And when I was growing up, uh, we have all the major food ration. And as I can remember clearly, anything for grain, for food oil, for meat, fish, or eggs, all need a separate ration
Wow.
ticket. You need a separate ration ticket. Otherwise, even you have the money, you cannot buy. And but we don't have much money to begin with. And as far as the food oil, just imagine, give you a perspective, the food oil per person is about 17, little over 17 ounce per month. And that's all you can have for each person. And then the major part is the food, such as grain. And at the part of the country I grew up with, the main stop of the food, surprisingly not rice, because the rice are more precious and more focused to the southern part of China. The part of I grew up is in Manchuria near Russia, Far East Russia, and near Korea, and the other side is the outer Mongolia. So
So
our
that's
food
the part
got.
where we call Eurasia.
Yes, and
Eurasia.
actually Eurasia is further west, and this is just Manchuria, Far East in Russia. And what our major food stock is corn.
Mm.
Everything we eat is corn and sorghums, and these are and some millets and the rice. We only have 2 pounds of rice per person a whole month. And so there's uh, everything added together. One family like mine, my parents, this is before the one child policy. And my mom always wanted a daughter. And it turned out after 5 of us boys, she finally gave up. And
So one child policy, but she ended up having five boys.
well, this is before that one child policy.
Oh, before the one child. I was
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah,
that's much
yeah.
more than
Yes, yes. And my youngest brother was born before even they started the one child policy. And
I see.
that's why my family can get away with 5 of us. But the
5 boys.
issue,
Wow.
yeah, but the issue is that you can imagine when the food is rationed, 5 boys get into closer to teenage years.
Hmm.
That's just not enough for us.
No.
And I'm the oldest of 5. And I remember as a teenager, I have to get on my bicycle in the fall, riding about 40 miles away from home to the countryside, to the rural area, and gleaning the field for the leftover corns or potatoes left in the field to help
Wow.
feed the family. And that's what I remember what socialists would do. And I grew up in it. And pretty soon, we also gone through the craziness of the Cultural Revolution. And the whole country gone mad. Before I even graduated from high school, I was sent to the labor camp. Was supposed to be re-educated in the countryside. So I was in the labor camp for whole 7 years from 1971 all the way to 1978. Only after Mao's death and Deng Xiaoping started the reform policy and restarted college admission because they realized the country has a whole 10 years no college enrolled college student, no graduate from college, period, for whole 10 years. And
Wow.
what they did is allow all the high school graduate, no matter which year, for the last 10 years, included the immediate graduate, altogether to take a nationwide college entrance exam and compete for the first time, compete only on the merit. And I got the opportunity after 7 years left high school and I didn't learn much in the high school anyway, and have to taught myself within 6 months to prepare. And it's just amazing. I think it was the year I got to the college. It was 7% admission rate for the entire participants.
You
And
know, it's interesting, Garry, because from what my perspective, I always thought that because you were living in communism, education was so encouraged and it was free, it was available to everyone. I mean, that's the perspective that we have of communism, that you have free education for equal, not only free, but equal education for everyone. And it's not competitive. And of course, that goes with all the other free things, you free healthcare. So are you saying that that's not accurate?
oh, well, at least not accurate during the time I supposed to go to college, and 10 years after that. And so this the situation changed today too. But I'm talking about that time. It took
Mm.
me hard work, study, catching up the entire 4 years of high school education on my own. And get into the top university of the country. Actually, Peking University recently was ranked worldwide, was number 23, I believe. So
Wow.
that is the university I got into and studied history and archaeology. And it's uh, one thing, even though initially it was just chasing academic education and hope to make a better of my life within that
Sure.
system. But for me, it's different from that time on because number one, I have, one thing I'm proud of myself that I have a brain and I can independently think. Despite all the brainwashing, I started challenging and questioning what I see and what I was taught.
So
And
you are, because of your preparation, then you're prepared for what the sort of brainwashing you're seeing in this country. Did you ever think that what you were
yeah,
happened that happened there? But we'll get to that. So continue to tell me. So about what year was this?
this was in 1978. 1978. And so for me, the other vignette I need to mention, during the Cultural Revolution, this is just an oxymoron. The word they use for Cultural Revolution in reality is cultural destruction because they basically destroy anything cultural, art, or
So
education.
this is what the cancel culture, what you're seeing
Exactly.
here.
Exactly. And that's why I feel so related to myself because I still feel the pain. I have my deja vus. And, at the time I'm at the labor camp or even the later part of my so-called high school, we don't really having any class. And the revolution threw all the teacher into the labor camp and the principal, everything. Anybody educated was considered enemy. And the more thinks, the more you educated, the more you become anti-revolutionary. And that's their whole idea, is to try to make a fool of the people. It would be easy for them to rule. And I still remember one of the history teacher risked his life literally and preserve some of the book and sneak out and learn me to read. And that time I was just devoured any knowledge that is possible under the environment that the knowledge is bad.
My goodness, this is so amazing because it's as though you're helping us have a different perspective, and including me myself that still sees some good that comes from socialism, because you have a country that can provide education to all and equally. That's one of the promises of socialism. So that was your experience. So what were your parents doing at that time? Was your father also, was he college educated? What was your father's background?
Well, that's another thing that I need to mention. Both my father and my mother never finished the grade school. And my mother literally is illiterate only goes through 3 years of reading classes, training, or just learn barely how to read. And my father is I think it was the highest is a fifth grade, and so they both just from the workers. I grew up in a workers family, and not like many people that has a family inheritance of this uh, education or culture, and I basically uh, made myself and from that
That's
environment.
fantastic. So you came from pretty much a poor working class family, and you
In
had a
Taiwan,
vision. Did
yeah.
so? Did your parents tell you that you could achieve anything? What was the conversation around your family? What made you
Well,
believe that you could actually achieve these things? Because you come from none of your neighbors were doing it. I mean, you didn't have friends who were having these big dreams. What made you think that you would be different?
well, I think that was way from young. I love reading, and I kind of, through the reading, I set a lot of accomplished heroes as my hero and set my goals to achieve in my life no matter what. And I also believe through my own effort and I can change the trajectory of my life. And that belief even set that ambition way further. And my parents, actually, especially my father, he was very timid and almost afraid of everything. He's very intelligent, but part of the reason is because his father actually died at age 26. My father at that
Mm,
time was only 6 years old.
mm,
However, his father, when he died, he was a police officer
mm,
of the old government. And
mm.
after the communists take over, because of that, then we are not in a good family. 'Cause,
Oh, so you were
uh,
penalized for your
yeah,
connections to the old government.
yeah, yeah, and that connection has no bearing since my father, uh, my grandmother, remarried to a poor worker has nothing to do with that ex-husband, but simply the Chinese government, especially this communist government, so rigorously checking whatever your bloodlines, because they really believe that if you're from their class enemies section, you would never be a loyal of them. So that's part of the thing that lingering over my father that he never even dared to achieve.
My
Everything
goodness.
he just trying to survive and protect and not get into trouble.
So
And
that's
sometimes
fascinating because it makes you feel almost that he saw his limitations and he wanted you to achieve everything that he never did, both him and your mother.
yeah, and so that's the thing because of my early exposure to the literatures and especially some of the secret reading. The worst part is I still don't have a lot of choice of books to learn anything outside China. And once I get to Peking University, which is the top university in the country, and
Hmm.
has the best library in any university. And now I all of a sudden get all the books that I want or I can read. So my first thing get to the college, besides I have to keep up with my academic education, keep my up my grade, all the spare time I spend on reading and understanding the world outside of this China, this country I was born. And
Wow.
I'm not going to just accept wherever you are born, and that is your limitation and your destiny. And
Absolutely.
I started seeing the world of different countries, and I started comparing the country, its culture, its heritage, and most importantly, its political system and its government system. And
Absolutely.
after 2 years examining, I have decided already, American America is the country I want to be. American is I chosen myself to be, and I do everything that needed to accomplish that. And keep in mind that I got to college at age 24. And at the time I entered Peking University, I do not speak a single word of English.
I was going to ask you, what point did
And,
you learn
and,
English?
and
Because you
do
didn't
not
have books in English.
do not read, do not speak, and I learn English only as the kind of not even the major class. It's just part of a foreign language regular training academically. But I since I already set my eyes to come this country, and I know overcome that language barrier is a must. So I prepared for about 8 or 9 years of my time that
Wow.
put the extra time in learning English, and finally set up this goal. I've been able to apply to American universities and even get a scholarship.
That's fantastic. So you got your scholarship and you decided, okay, so after 9 years of studying English, you're ready to come to the US. Did you come to the US knowing you would never go back to China, or did you just say you're going to come and study and decide, you will just go back after 4 years when you finish your education?
For me, particularly, I came to the United States in 1987. And since I already mentioned, I spent that many years to set my eye in this country and set my goal. So I come in to stay. This is my chosen country, and this is being American is one of my major goals that I want to accomplish. So all I need is to see what is the legal ways to become a U.S. citizen, and I see clearly academic education, pursue high education is one of the routes I can take, and that's why I study and work hard on my academic accomplishment, and being able to actually, I was admitted by multiple universities that include Harvard, and uh, but since I came from a humble background that has no
Mhm.
money, and I will totally rely on both the scholarship situation as well as the living stipends from any university allows me for me to be able to come, because unfortunately Harvard gave me the tuition waiver, but was not provided the living stipend, so I have to give that up. And luckily University of Pittsburgh was
Mhm.
the one that gave me the opportunity to make my dream to be realized. So I went to University of Pittsburgh in 1978 to start my study. And interestingly, I have always uh, merged my academic training and education with my life go together. And for me, you couldn't really tell them apart. And the reason I'm saying that is, uh, remember one of my academic background is in anthropology, and
Mhm.
especially in cultural anthropology. And in that field of study, one of our major training is to gain the ability we call the participative observation. So if you study a culture that is not your own, which
Mm-hmm.
is what anthropologists do, and the best way to learn that is to live in it. And so for me, I learned that, I use that in my life. I come to America, I live in America, live my American life to become
You're
an
American free.
American. Yes. And I would be, see, one of the things is also I'm not seeking the surface. And as a matter of fact, I admire a lot of immigrants coming here focusing on their financial success and not giving burdens to this country. And that is a very admirable goal for a lot of people. For me, that is one of the goals, but it's far from enough. I'm coming to this country, want to become American. I want to be a true American that can absorb all the nutrients of our founding fathers, the philosophy, the founding principles, and what make this country great in the world. So that is the thing I try to absorb and learn and immerse myself with. And to just mention one thing to demonstrate that, it was I came to Pittsburgh in fall of 1987, and by 1990, April of 1990, a local newspaper, now is gone. At the time, it's called the Pittsburgh Press.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh Press has a reporter noticed that I'm so amazingly adopted in the American culture and become more American than many American born here. So he struck a strong interest. He started not only interview me, he basically followed me for more than a month, taking pictures and wrote a full page and a half article. The title is Americanization of Garry
Mm.
Guan. And keep in mind, this was 2.5 years I'm coming to this country.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
yeah, for me, that is a very proud accomplishment that I made myself. I transformed me from heart and soul and my body as an American. And just less than 2 years after that, I also realized my American dream, bought my first new car, and bought my first house on a regular mortgage in Pittsburgh. And
Yes,
and I'm still a full-time graduate student.
fantastic. But I want to ask you, so what happened to your parents and your brothers back home?
My parents both has passed away in the 90s, late 90s. And my father passed in the middle of 1990s, and my mother passed away 1999, right before the year 2000. And
Mm,
I did not make back to visit them 7 years after I'm in this country. So the
mm.
first time I visited, my father already passed away, and I did get a chance to see my mother for the last time. And
And your brothers?
my I have four younger brothers. And they are all still in China, and in some of them still in the same hometown I grew up with from, and some moved to the southern part of the country, and they all got married and have their children. And interestingly, I'm the oldest of the family. I'm the last one get married. I have my kids, and
Because you did it the American way.
yes, and
We do business first and then family later.
yeah, I have my son at age 47, and my daughter after I've already reached 50. And the funny thing is, when I go to their parents' meetings, a lot of people mistaking me as a grandparent.
Well,
Because
I appreciate that because when you come with such, I guess, restrictions growing up, you grew up in communist China, you so want your freedom. You so
yes,
appreciate your freedom that
yes,
because being a parent is in a way very restrictive. So
that's
I can fully understand and relate. And I mean, I didn't grow up in a communist country, but I did grow up with a military father. So it's kind of almost the same.
yeah, Sandra. I want to mention one of my crazy theory. I kind of try to just try to make a good reason what I have done. I already done. Just people's habit. I say, hey, think of this way. You know, there is an expression called the empty nest. When your child grow up and you are living into a time of empty nest, that lonely, and yes, you have all the time at your hand, but you're so old, couldn't enjoy it. So what I
Absolutely.
say, my choice is I live my empty nest years beforehand. I cast that first.
I know exactly what you mean. But you think about it, President Trump, well, how old was, I think he was probably, in his late 50s when he married
Yes,
Melania. So,
yeah,
age
yeah,
is nothing but a number. We're just programmed to think like we have to do things outside the box. Well, you knew early on that you were not going to do things like the rest of your neighbors or your family in China. So
no,
I
but
applaud your choices. So I want to talk to you more about your it brings us to leadership. And
mhm,
of course, you ran for Congress in 2020. You were the Republican candidate for Georgia State Senate.
yes.
And so that takes quite a bit of commitment and courage and leadership. So I want you to talk to a little bit about your style of leadership because having been and I talk about military and I talk about socialism, those are very distinct styles of leadership. This is more an authoritarian style of
Mhm.
leadership, but you've come to a country that does not embrace that style. So how were you able to make that transition? Because you've had leadership roles. I mean, you have a PhD, you're a doctor in anthropology. You must have had management positions that required that you navigate with teams and guide people. So talk to the audience and myself about how you were able to balance the authoritarian with the more loose, more inclusive form of management.
Okay, Sandra, I'm glad you bring this up, and I may slightly, if you can indulge me, to extend a little bit of um, my academic background, why that even play a role in my leadership and in my life, my politics, and as well as the community service. And one of the thing, as you mentioned, my background is in history, archaeology, and anthropology. And what I have seen, very few people realize, besides this just academic field of study, I took them all to be uh, enhancing or benefiting my life. And the reason I'm saying that is think about if you are a scholar of archaeology, what you are looking at throughout the history. You're not looking at 4 years, 8 years, even 100 years. You're looking at thousands of hundreds of thousand years of human history, how we come to today. And that naturally give you the perspective that is far deeper than ordinary people. And that's also give you the strength to endure whatever setback or hardship you may be facing. Because for me, from that perspective, I'm always being able to keep up my optimistic because I knew how far we have gone as a human being, as a society, and as an American, as a country, and in the whole scale of what I'm studying, this is so short, even the entire American history. And so that is for me, is a way to build your own, just a broad-minded ability. And the other thing, cultural anthropology is the study of cultures that are other than yours. And keep in mind that if you adopt that in your life, you always learn, try to understand the people, and don't set whatever you grew up is the only right way or the center of the universe. Because you know that is not true. And you always being able to see the benefit of cross the cultural line, the barrier, and have a broader mind. And that ability to make a friend in the people who did not grow up in the same environment as your own, for me, it's a God-given benefit for me to be able to make new friends, and in political or social or community services, that is just convenient to me so much in my way of leadership, because I'm relatively non-confrontational, and always proud of myself being able to understand others, and most importantly, respect others, even the one that hold completely different or opposite view of my own.
That's wonderful, and I see that. And of course, I can see how the culture can sort of shape your perspective in your style, because that non-confrontational is very relevant in China, because
Yes.
of the type of government, because you are a product of where you come from, and you spend a significant number of years. But the other thing I wanted to ask, though, I mean, China did not allow, there was no room for God in China, but I see that you've adopted the Christian God,
Yes.
that, the United States offers. I want to talk to you about, first of all, when did that start? When did you come to understand that you needed to have a relationship with God? And does that help you even more as a leader than any other sort of cultural experience that you've had?
Yes, absolutely so. And I actually come to know God is relatively later compared to all my immersions. And this was, I would consider almost the last step of the homecoming. And it was way back in 2007, somewhere around that time. And of course, one of the things that when you study cultural anthropology, one part of the study is also religion, and that it has benefit, and also uh, present challenges, because when you start compare all different religions and study them in certain depths, it's very hard when you treat that as an academic subject and to eventually turn into believer of one of them. And so that's it's a very natural process. But I think that one of the things, I have always been a very spiritual person, and I also know and understand that the need for human beings need the ultimate guidance, and the faith is a very fundamental part of a person as a whole person. And so through all these experience, so I actually, uh, both me and my family, we have been, when we were about ready, and we start what we call church hopping. We kind of
Hmm.
go to many different church, different denominations, and
Yes,
uh,
my family's done that as well. It takes me
yeah,
back when you
yeah,
say, when you speak about that.
yeah, and until we find the right the pastor we enjoy, and because most of them we already determined to be Christians, but should be to be the Baptists or Lutherans or whichever group, and So after all these visits, we finalized at the United Methodist Church, and my family joined ever since. So it's for me, it's almost like a finally found a home. And
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing is I got into way earlier into community service before I even touch politics, and that is
Right.
I think one of the part of my life. Even I mentioned in my bio as a Rotarian, I
Mm-hmm.
joined the Rotary Club in 1997,
Oh,
and
wow.
from that time on, I have always been a Rotarian, and I consider being a Rotarian is almost my second identity. And
Really?
I'm so proud of the organization and what they do, and I'm just so proud of being part of it. And I have done so much through my life of Rotary. And as a matter of fact, was another interesting in that is in 2003, 2001. I was selected as a group study exchange team leader by the Rotary District in the state of Georgia. We belong to 6900. And to take a delegate of 4 young American professionals visiting Taipei, Taiwan, for that Rotary district there. And this is one of the Rotary program that 2 district governors joined and agreed and sent a delegate to each other's district.
Mm.
So what we do is we would live in the Rotarians' home 1 week at one family, and we spend 5 weeks in Taiwan and visit the profession we each in, and learn the culture, learn the people, and get to know each other. And they did the same, send a delegate here to Georgia. And during that trip, it was my wife today was one of the alumni of this program in Taiwan that just the year before I visited Taiwan, visited Switzerland. And through this program, so as a volunteer, she is kind of giving back to Rotary. So she became a volunteer, helping receiving us. And
Wow.
that's how we get to know each other.
Oh,
And uh,
wow.
and and that's we just imagine at the time and even now China and Taiwan still haven't get along, and I'm in America and she is in Taipei, and this world we get to know each other and fall in love, and both of us is get married for the first time. She's 10
Oh,
years
wow.
young, She's 10 years younger. She's the oldest of her family. Was all
Interesting
her.
how that works out. So,
Yeah, and
what is your wife's name?
Paulina.
That's a beautiful name. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
name. So I wanted to correct because, as you said earlier, I said that it was Congress. No, it is. I'm speaking with Mr. Garry Guam, who was a candidate for district Senate seat District 40 in Georgia, and that was in November 3rd election. And he's been so kind to speak with me, and I'm so grateful. And I hope you are enjoying this conversation, talking about what led him so far to come to the US and his cultural process. This acculturation process. It's an acculturation from being under a communist government in Chinese and coming to the US where free in America. And so how he's come to grow to love this country. And it must have been very hard to leave everything behind, to leave your family behind, but you sometimes freedoms comes with a cost, doesn't it?
Yes, yes,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and so I want to talk to you. And so your experience, your journey, you found God, and it started just unfolding for you so naturally. So said you now attend the Methodist church. I grew up Methodist. My
Oh,
parents were both Methodist. So
I
I'm very
see.
grateful to say that I was raised in what you call St. Paul's Methodist Church in Haiti. And
I see.
we've been talking for some time now, and I want to bring the audience as to you both and I. We have a commonality, a love for politics, and leadership. But I want you to talk to the audience now, and I want to first say thank you for everything that you've shared with me about the personal journey, and I'm grateful that you've been able to be so open with us. So I want now to take you back to today, where we are. So you ran a campaign, a very successful campaign. You were the um, um, Republican nominee for the primary winner in the primary race for the Republicans, and then you faced your opponent on November 3rd. And
Yes.
so, as far as I'm concerned, you're the winner. CNN will
Thank
come
you.
after me. But
Yeah.
if CNN can dictate who the winner is in a race, I can too.
Thank you.
Right? So Fox News and all these news outlets, they say, there's a winner. I still get news articles that say we have a winner. Even when you open YouTube, they said the elections, we have a winner. And I'm going, well, I can say that. Then Gary, you're the winner.
Sandra, a lot of people were talking about the roller coaster experience, and just imagine within a few hours after 7 p.m. in Georgia, poll closed, and the the first posting of our voting result was some of the early vote. I don't know how or why they start that way, and happened to be I got like a 433 vote, and my opponent is 700 some vote. So I was like a 37%. This is the beginning starter. And then as the hours keep passing by, the numbers start changing. My 37% start climbing to 39, to 40, to 41, all the way in few hours climb to 49.25, the highest point.
Wow.
Then after that, it started going down steadily and to the point I end up lost with less, a little bit shy of 40%. And once I got a chance to look into the details, and this is the election day on November 3rd, the vote cast in my district, the total number on that day in all the polls is a little bit, it's actually 12,998, 2 votes shy of 13,000. But the total number of the final ballot cast in my district is over 89,000. And put this into your thinking cap, think about that the election already decided before November 3rd. And on that day, November 3rd, I actually came out a winner in most of the precinct and also in the overall. But, and that's why that special roller coaster I got drive all the way up to 49, almost start reaching to the goal of 50%. And then the absentee ballots started coming in, and the advance vote started coming in, and the number end up is I lost about 11,000 in absentee ballot.
So help me understand and help the audience understand, because this is where it gets very juicy. So
Yes,
we had 30 minutes of very calm conversation about
yes.
your journey, and we talked about God. So we're going to call God to help us understand what happened. So your state, Georgia, is very famous right now around the world
Well,
because
it's not
it's
really we were
technically,
thinking. I wish
first of
we
all,
wasn't.
Georgia
Yes.
is a red state,
Mm-hmm.
or it used to be, but
Or
it seems
was.
that
I
overnight
was.
it went blue.
Mm-hmm.
So help us understand how it went from, and we still have a Republican governor.
Mm-hmm.
The legislature is still Republican, correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how
And
are you losing? Because right now there are two, your race seem to be very close. So I have to put a question mark on that.
well,
And
actually, my race wasn't close at all because there are four House districts inside of mine. All the other Republican candidates lost by slightly over 40%. I'm the lowest because there is a fifth House district territory. We do not even have a Republican candidate. So with the heavy loss there, and I think I did the best I could in my
but
district.
that's astonishing to me because Georgia is a red state, isn't it? So
It was.
how is it
It was
that, well, it's not red anymore.
not
So
anymore,
I'm
and uh,
going to,
and and I have to add, not as many of the Republicans doing the way they're doing now,
well,
and
that
it's
was my next point.
that.
I blame the leadership. I blame the leadership all the way down to Georgia, to all the way up to Washington in the Republican Party. My path is I voted for Bush in 2000.
Hmm.
I boycotted the elections in 2004 because I saw what the Republicans were doing,
Hmm.
and it was not America first. It was always self
Yeah.
interest first. So I said, you know what? Let me go vote my conscience. So I went to the Libertarian Party,
Hmm.
and I just interviewed a guest who was speaking about, we shouldn't even bother with the Libertarian Party. But you know what? I don't agree because I think the Libertarian Party has some
No.
really great issues. A lot of Republicans tend to be libertarian minded because we're into free markets, we're into no government, no big governments, we don't like taxation, we do not
Yeah.
want foreign intervention,
Yeah.
we it's laissez-faire. So it's
Yes.
really, when you think about it, that's the MAGA. That's the
Hmm.
MAGA platform.
Hmm.
MAGA platform is in its conservative. Um,
Hmm.
so talk to me about the leadership, and when did this start happening? Because I know someone retired last year, 2000, no, in 2018. When did
Yes.
Kelly Loeffler become senator?
It was January of this year, and it's Senator Isaacson, uh, Johnny Isaacson, the one of our senior senator,
He
because
retired.
because of a House reason, and he actually retired in the middle of his term. He was elected for 6 years term, and of course he's re-elected. He's been several terms in the Senate already, but
Hmm.
his 6 years, he announced the retirement for December 31st of 2018, which was barely finished his third year of the 6 year term. And as the rule, our governor have to appoint a successor to serve his term, but only for this 1 year, 2019. And whoever have to go through a special general election to fill in for the next 2 years, start from 2021 to
Right.
2022, then you back to the regular 6 years election. So this is a very unusual. You have two U.S. senators on the same ballot on the same year for the election because of this unique situation.
This is amazing. And I'm fascinated by that. Of course, before that, I never really bothered to find out about what's happening in Georgia, other than I remember doing in 2018 when Brian Kemp was in a very close,
Close, right? Yeah.
campaign. And we had to do a recount. So, we had the same in Florida with DeSantis. And so it was a very, very tight race. So you would think you would think, with that being the case, that Mr. Brian Kemp would have been a little bit more careful and more orderly in the governance, that situations like this would not happen, because he experienced it directly with, the voter count, because Stacey Abrams is waiting to run again in 2 years. I'm sure she
I
will.
I'm aware of that, and just to kind of provide a little bit further background information, and I actually start getting involved in Georgia politics is way back in 2008, and
Mhm,
my first time announced that I'm going to run for state senate district 5 at that time. It's adjacent to where I'm right now, and
mhm,
it was April, middle of April of that year, I announced, and the election was 2010. So I started my campaign almost more than 18 months ahead, or 20 months almost,
mhm,
from April all the way to November of 2021. And so that is the time I start uh, uh, pay more closer attention in politics and study.
mhm.
And keep in mind, one of the things that I have always benefited in my life is my ability to learn and the quick learner. Because you imagine learning the language, learning the culture, adopt everything,
Absolutely.
they all take that ability. So wherever I start from scratch, I can very quickly catch up and surpass most of the people in
Sure.
that new venture I get into. So that's how I started politics, and I started politics in the environment that the Georgia Republican is on the rise, and the 2010 election is literally is the climate of Republican party in the state of Georgia. Now
Mhm.
everybody just think about Georgia is a red state, but to be solid red, that was the year. And uh, that was our first Republican governor in state of Georgia was at that time I started running was serving on his second term, and the last 2 years of his second term.
And who
That
and who
is
was that? Who was the first?
Sonny Perdue right now is
Oh,
Secretary of
David
Agriculture.
Perdue, who's running for Senate.
No, Sonny Perdue was his cousin, and
I see. Okay.
a different person, but was the first Republican governor since the Civil War. Just imagine. And he only served 2 years. He knocked out a very popular Democratic governor, the last Democratic governor in our state.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
and that governor was actually pretty popular in the Democrat, but Republican win. And from that point on, uh, go into 2010 election under the strong leadership of all the Republicans from the state party down to everybody, the foot soldiers, that we made a sounding victory in that year. That is they talk about blue wave. I would say in Georgia, 2010 was red tsunami, because that was the year that the Republican win from the governor down to every single statewide constitution officer. Anybody has to go through statewide election is completely red.
So why do
Republican.
you think that was? What was the trigger to get the Republicans over the edge? What caused the voters to accept the platform of the Republican Party, which is much more conservative? Was it religion? Because I know that's one thing that brings over the voter to
Yes.
the, especially, minority voters, Black voters, Latino voters. So was God again playing a part in United States politics?
Well, for me, from my own personal experience, this is not as academic research. I'm purely speaking from what I have gone through by participating in politics in 2008 for that 2010 election. And
Hmm.
I can testify on my own experience that was the Republicans' openness and unity. And being saying the openness, consider about, because a lot of people couldn't believe me that speak English still with a very strong accent. And I couldn't hide the way you just the first glance that I'm not born and grew up here.
Right.
And get into politics as a Republican in deep South. To many people, this is hardly thinkable, and they just don't think the Republican Party would even welcome me. But on the contrary, the time I announced for the first day, I met with open arm of Gwinnett Republican Party. And the first vice chair of the party at the time, also the chairman of the Young Republicans of Gwinnett Party, was immediately stand out, support my candidacy. And not only that, he was the one invited me for my first campaign speech to the Young Republicans meeting of Gwinnett County, and later on served as the chairman of my campaign. And I have received the Republican sitting senators, almost the entire Republican Senator caucus, strong supporter of my campaign. And the Senate President pro temp, Tommy Williams, I will never forget him, and introduced me to all the others, just like an old buddy of his. And
Absolutely.
I never felt that I being an outsider.
Sure.
And with all my disadvantages, it became an advantage. And I was so supported and loved by the whole party, and our lieutenant governor at the time, and lent his hand and his team to help me, guide me, and the Senate Republican Majority Leader, Chip Rogers, uh, on that election day, he himself standing in front of the voting station, waving signs on my behalf.
Wow.
And that's what
Fantastic.
made the Republican Party great. I did not win that election, but I accomplished my goal because initially when I participated is what I have been so frustrated when I was a volunteer, try to educate the immigrant community, the Asian American population, to pay attention, to participate, get involved in the mainstream politics, and of course, community activities too. And one of the shortcomings for many of them is a language barrier. And the other thing is the background they coming from, they tend to be trying to stay away from anything related to government, and
Hmm.
never really thought of they themselves could be the master of this country, of their own destiny, and not only that, to serve the people here.
Right.
And so I after I worked so hard to educate my community and encouraging voter registration, and it just like hitting on a brick wall. And finally, I realized I guess one thing I can do is become a candidate, and this may get them excited.
Sure.
Well,
And did that get excited?
yes, they did. But I have to tell you another truth is 2016, I have another new realization. Even me as a Chinese American and Asian American running the public office to inspire the immigrants community get into the politics and realize that I'm doing this, also set a role model for them, that to telling them they can do this as well. And I got to support, but that support is a far minimum compared to what President Trump excited my own community. And I was shocked. As an Asian, I did not get this many people out, and the President Trump did.
I bet. Well, he is the first president to really speak out against communism or socialism. And when he gave the State of the Union, and when he first said this country will never be a socialist country, I think that's probably when your community said, "Oh my goodness, fine, I'm safe." Because they saw the sign. At some point you had to question, my God, is this country going to be like China? Because like you said, it's making you bring back those memories. And then finally somebody said it out loud, this will not happen. So
no, right.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Frankly Speaking with Sendra D on Sendor TV. Please subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when a new episode is uploaded. Also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and we definitely appreciate you being part of this community. Pray for humanity.